All right. Welcome, everyone. It's the pre-show. If you're watching on the replay, you can fast forward another 6 minutes, 6 minutes and 15 seconds, and you'll be able to get to the beginning, or you can just hang out here with us, where we are at professormesser.com/live. /live. And the chat room is there. This is here. Oh, we need to change the website, the site with the web. On the server thing. So let's do that. You can see, if you're watching the bird feeder today, lots of noise in the background. The neighbors are building. So there's a big bulldozer out there moving dirt around, creating dust. Okay, let's update under settings, under the promo bar. What's up, Big H? In the chat room. This needs to say my A+ study group is right now. Click here to join us. And should go to /live. And reset the cookie and save the changes. And let's put this in the chat room. If you're watching on YouTube and you're live, you can go to professormesser.com/live to watch, where there is also a chat room, because you'll notice there's no chat room there. Oh, look, my calendar says it's time for the study group. Is that so? Let's see if that's so. Let's see if I get a tweet, automated tweet that says, yes, indeed, there it is. Okay, good. Full screen. And what else? We're recording here. Cylons are going down here, so that's good. It's my recorder. I'm also recording on the TriCaster that's in front of me. So 2 recorders, plus the recorder that really happens on the YouTube side, although that is not foolproof. Audio is good. Oh, I need to get Skype loaded. The Scrata room name is Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER, just like this in the chat room there. You won't hear me say it until like 20 or 30 seconds later. There's Skype. We'll use Skype later in the after show when we connect and take phone calls. We need a few things on the screen here. I am just way behind with everything. Where's the pinpoint? Pinpoint needs to get loaded. Pinpoint needs to get loaded here. Pinpoint is loaded there. Slideware, very nice. Let's get Keynote going here. All the things, when you don't really, what's the word I'm looking for? Prepare. Keynote. Is this not going to work for me? It's not. Now the iPad is having a problem. It's very confused. Let's try that again. Keynote. There's Keynote. And is it on the right network? I don't think it is. Let's see if it is. Oh, it is. Okay. It's on the right network. So Keynote's working. This thing's working. Let's get up and running. There's the bird feeder. If you do watch the bird feeder, birdfeeder.live, it's in my backyard. That is noisy today, at least for the moment. What did we need to do? We needed to do a thing. Oh, yeah. I need to get a few things up and running on my screen, move some things around. This needs to go over here. And I need to load up this thing. Let's get up the course notes so people can see those. Course notes, boom. And course notes, let's do this version. Yeah, those are good. And this one goes to this side, and this one goes to that side. And it's all good. And we need to bring up our friends at GTS Learning. Get them on deck. On the deck of something. Does it work? It does work. All right. If you are on my website, it's the live event chat that I'll be watching. The general chat, where we usually are, is over there, but I don't really pay much attention to it during the live event. Well, sure, Titanfall, not to be confused with Titanfall 2. You can ask a question. That would be the perfect time to do it, since we have a minute and 40 seconds left. This would be it. What happened on my time? With the time. Let's see what's going on here. There's the people. I see you joining. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Camera check, shall we? Here's me. Hi, everybody. Hi, it's me. Camera 2, camera 3, which is what's on my screen now. Camera 4, as long as I'm there. Graphic. It's all good. Yay. Yeah, let's do the new interface. How bad can it be, right? I'm sure it'll be great. I'm sure it'll work fine. It's the little things. This is good. All right. Okay. What are we doing today? What's going on? Oh, we're almost ready to get started. I really need to get, what's the word? Oh, yes, my act together and close out like all the games that are on my desktop and close out. Well, I can't show you some of these. So we're going to do this while I close out things that you're not supposed to see because I'm doing stuff, secret stuff. There's secret stuff. Save changes. Oh, yes, save changes. Save changes to the top secret stuff that I've been working on. I got to close those out. There's all kinds of nonsense going on this side of the screen that you just don't even get to enjoy. Okay. Let's go back to our Google Chrome. Let's get the Socrative up and running. Let's close out the birdfeeder.live in my backyard. Let's I think we're ready. I think it's way past 12 noon and I should have been doing this already. So let's do this. Let's hit a button. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2016 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. It's my monthly study group where I ask you a bunch of questions, and hopefully sometime during this hour you'll get to answer them and perhaps even get them right. Although, if you don't get them right, it's almost better that way. That way you've actually learned something during this hour. See how I couch that? Right off the bat, no pressure whatsoever. I'll talk all about how you can participate, answer questions live along with everyone else who's watching on the internet as we go through this today. This is something I like to do every month. It's something where I get to take all of the things that we've been asked during the month, and even if you've registered for this, I ask you a question that you might want to know about the A+, and I try to turn them into questions and answers. We're going to show you later on how we use Socrative to be able to answer some of those questions. During this first hour, we'll do Q&A, and usually during, after that, the after show, however long it lasts, I'll have the phone lines open. You'll be able to call in and be able to work through some of those things too. If you're someone who watches my videos, they're absolutely free to watch. Every minute of every video is online for free for you. But of course, if you'd like to take one offline, if you'd like MP3 versions, if you'd like to have my pop quiz questions and my study guides all combined together into one big piece, I also have that available. You can find out more at professormesser.com/download 900. If you are watching this, perhaps you already have your A+ certification or another CompTIA certification or even other manufacturer certifications, and you'd like to get continuing education credits, sometime during this first hour, I'm going to give you a continuing education credit secret word of the month. And I'll tell you exactly how to use that secret word to get that continuing education credit when I get to that point. That's part of getting the CEU, is learning how you get the CEU. So we'll talk all about that as well. The latest A+ certification, as we are sitting here in November of 2016, is the 220-901 and the 220-902. They were released, now almost a year ago. Oh, how time flies. The 801 and 802, the English language versions of the previous editions of the certification, were retired in June. And if you are someone who is in a country where English is not the primary language, you'll notice you can still take the 800 series exams until the end of the calendar year. At that point, the 800 series goes away, and then everybody switches over to the 900 series, which would make me very happy when that happens. This transition period's a weird time because everybody's juggling different versions. So it'll be nice to have everybody on the same version. It doesn't matter whether you take the 800 or 900 or whether you took the 800 series and got your A+. It's exactly the same A+ as if you were taking your 900 series exam. So it doesn't matter which one. The important part is you take the 2 exams and you are then A+ certified, and you may never even have to take another exam again to continue to have that A+ certification. There is a renewal test that CompTIA has come up with for both the A+, and I think they're rolling it out for the Network Plus, where you can take an update exam instead of going through all of the continuing education units. So that might be something to consider as well. So something to fill the gap between people who didn't want to collect the CEUs, but they also didn't want to take a higher level certification. So I think that was a nice middle ground. They're not giving a lot of information about that exam, just some high level topics. So you may want to check CompTIA's website for more information on those renewal exams. There's also a lot going on here with my course notes. Now I've got books that are out. I've written 2 books for the A+ that is nothing but questions. It is all Q&A. It's questions that I've taken from my pop quizzes that I send out daily. If you're not on that mailing list, you want to go to professormesser.com and get on that daily mailing list, or follow me on Twitter or follow me on Facebook. You'll see them there as well. But I've taken a bunch of questions that we've done over the years, and I've also written hundreds of new questions. So there's a lot of questions that are in these books that you'll never find anywhere else. They're exclusive to these books. You'll find them in these pop quiz collection PDFs. I have one for the 22901 and the 22902. Combined, there's over 1,300 questions available, multiple choice and performance-based questions, something to really get you ready for the exam. You can find out more about these at professormesser.com/PQC, pop quiz questions, pop quiz collection for that. There is a lot in these books. I spent months writing the questions for these books, and I like that there are so many questions here across every single topic for the exam. I went through every single question. I made sure that every question applies to the 900 series exam. You will not find out-of-date questions in this book. You will not find topics in this book that go outside the CompTIA exam objectives, which are my pet peeves when I'm reading books. Why am I reading content that I don't need to know for the exam? I'm trying to pass a certification. And with so many questions, you can't go wrong. And they're only $10 a piece. So thank you. There's been great response to this. Thank you so much for everyone who has already purchased the books. Thank you if you're considering getting them. That link also has a download to those as well. So you can grab some of the download links. I have other completely different set of questions that I'm compiling out on professormesser.com/popquiz. This particular link are all of the archives of these study groups. So if you're somebody who doesn't have to, you don't want to watch all the study groups, I don't know why. It's incredibly entertaining. Why would you not want to watch this? Me? Aggressive? Passive? Maybe. There is all the questions all laid out for you on this link, so you don't have to watch me. You don't have to go through the video. You're missing a lot when you miss the video, of course, but if you just need some questions, you can go to professormesser.com/popquiz. These questions are not in the books. These questions are not in the daily pop quizzes. So this is another unique set of questions that I'm creating just for you. Now, if you'd like to join me today and answer questions live, finally we're at this point where now you can go to Socrative.com. And you can pop open a new window in your browser, go to Socrative.com, go to room name Professor Messer. You want to go to the student login link, by the way, not the teacher login link. That's mine. You want to go to the student login link, and you want to put in a room name Professor Messer, all one word, spell it right, or you'll be the only one in there. There should be a question already waiting for you. There's also apps you can get for your mobile device. So if you want to have your computer free to watch the video and your mobile device, you simply can download the Socrative Student app and put in the same room name, Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't see the question that I have there, which is this question: how long have you been studying for your A+ certification? And if you're in the right place, you'll see something like this pops up. So you have the ability now to be able to know what is going on with all of the questions. They will automatically show up on the screen. You don't have to click anything else. It just sits there and rotates through as I click the buttons on my side. And we can see here that 81 people have already answered. 42% of you have been doing this less than 3 months. Welcome. Isn't this fun? I think most people usually take an average of somewhere between 3 to 6 months to study for their A+ exam. So really we have almost 60% of you right there in that 6-month time frame. There's others like me that take much longer. So folks that take more than 9 months, those are my people. And then 22% of you already have your A+ certification. You're either here for the snacks or perhaps you're looking for continuing education credits. So maybe one of those two things. Let's do some questions though. Let's really get into the A+ side of things and see what we can do with this. Let's see if I have questions for you. I do. Let me get to the right slide so I can show you exactly the question. The first question that I have for you is this one. Let's click the button on my side so you'll see it. Which of the following would be the best way to extend the distance of a copper Ethernet connection? I guess this is a case where you're really extending this. This is not in a single room, for instance. You really need to extend the distance. So how would you do that? Which would be the best way? And by the way, this is a very common way for these questions to ask this of you on the exam. Would it be to add a router to each end of the connection? Would it be to add a line driver to the cable? Would it be to replace the copper wire with fiber? Would it be to create a VPN tunnel between the endpoints or to use a slower network speed? Which of these would be the best way to extend the distance of a copper Ethernet connection? You'll notice, by the way, that some of these could be used, multiple of these could be used to extend the distance of a copper Ethernet connection. But I didn't ask you for which all of these would be. I asked you which one would be the best way. Now, this is a very common thing on the exam for the test to ask questions in this form. They're looking to see if you have some practical knowledge of how you would accomplish this. So you really need more than what the book is going to tell you, or you either need to understand what each one of these answers possibly would require someone to do. Because I can look at least 1, 2, maybe even 3 of these could possibly be an answer out of the 5, but only one is really the best answer. See, the chat room's telling me it's a trap. It's a trap. It's not a trap. It's legit. It's a good one. And there really is one that jumps right out at you as the best answer. And I will explain to you when we get to that particular one if that's the case. In fact, all of you are sort of looking at this one and trying to figure it out. It's a hard one to Google, isn't it? Ha, I got you. Some of you like to go out and Google. So if you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. Instead, go to Socrative.com, click the student login, go to the room named Professor Messer if you are not there already, and see if you can just take a stab at it. And if you don't know, that's fine. On the exam, if you don't know, guess. If it's a multiple choice question, just put something down. You will not be penalized if you make a guess and get it wrong. But if you leave a question blank, there's no way for you to earn any points from that question. So you really have to answer, at least fill in all the bubbles. If you're down to the last 60 seconds and you still have 10 questions you didn't answer, just Christmas tree it. Just answer anything. Just take your best guess and at least get some everything bulleted in there. It becomes pretty important to make that happen. So let's see how we did with this first question. Which of the following would be the best way to extend the distance of a copper Ethernet connection? How do we do? Well, we're tied for 1, 2, and 3. We're pretty close, 1, 2, and 3. No clear winner, certainly no majority listed in this view. If we look at 37% said add a line driver to the cable. So if we were going at least with the one that got the most number of votes, we'd go with B. But right behind it at 33% is add a router to each end of the connection. 22%, I guess maybe a second. We could say those might be tied for first, but a second or maybe third would be to replace the copper wire with fiber. And hardly anyone chose to create a VPN tunnel between the endpoints, and hardly anyone chose to use a slower network speed. So which one of these would really be the best choice in this particular question? Well, let's find out. For those of you, I guess here in this case, if we go with the number that's the highest, although now almost a tied for first, is at a line driver, and I think those people are right on the money. This is exactly how we extend a distance across different media. And usually it's a copper connection. Even with a fiber connection, we might want to put line drivers in. Sometimes we are converting from one type of media to the other. Sometimes we are not converting. We're simply putting effectively a repeater in the middle of this, regenerating the signal and sending it on through the line. This is something very, very common to see on a network, although as network professionals, we hate to use these. Mainly because this is a powered device. It is regenerating the signal and sending it out through this connection. But the challenge here is because it's a powered device and there is electronics inside, that means it can break. So everybody who has these line drivers or media converters or distance extender devices on their network, almost everybody has a spare somewhere, because it's very common for the cheap little power supply that's the little cube that you plug into the power. It's very common for those to go bad, and then you're in trouble. I've seen these used on Ethernet links. They are used on serial connections. You'll see them inside of data centers. You'll see them extending across different buildings. This is something that you really put right on the edges so you can increase the power of the signal going over this, regenerate the signal, and therefore make this connection go even farther than what it might normally do. You also I see this a lot with serial type connections. If you need to extend a serial link from one side to the other, they'll put a category 5 in between and run that serial link over category 5 with these line drivers at the end of it. It's just another way to do it. And of course, if you have to troubleshoot these, it could be a pain because you don't know if your problem is with a protocol or if the line driver itself has had a problem. I wouldn't really think this would be a security list. Daryl's asking in the chat room, would this be a security problem? Not necessarily. No more than anything else that's on the network, because this doesn't have any intelligence to it other than regenerating the signal. You obviously always want to be concerned about anybody breaking a connection and putting their device in the middle. There's many components and ways to check for that. On copper connections, you don't tend to see copper connections used if the network, if you're so concerned about somebody getting into the middle of the link, because you can actually get an inductive tap that doesn't break the connection on copper, that's able to hear feel the voltage going through and be able to recreate that. Most of the time when it's that type of environment, you're using fiber, which cannot be inductively tapped. You'd have to break the connection, and when you break the connection, you get notifications that the connection has been broken. So in this case, if you are one of the folks that said B, add a line driver to the cable, you got that one absolutely right. That really would be the best way to extend a copper Ethernet connection. I was very careful with this question to not tell you we were converting from copper to fiber, because replacing the copper with fiber is not an easy thing. There's obviously an expense associated with this, because you're going to have to swap out the copper for a fiber connection. Someone will have to run a brand new connection across that link. It's something that is not easy to do. That may ultimately be something that people would like to do, but that's not the best way based on the options that you have available for this question. Putting a router at each end of the connection doesn't change the overall distance. You still have a router that's not able to hear because you've extended the distance past what normally would be happening. So adding a router doesn't help you at all. In fact, most of the time when you're connecting between two very distant locations, it's a router on the other end anyway. So that wouldn't help you. You're back to where you were with having a router. And the folks that did not answer D&E, you were right on the money. You would not create a VPN tunnel between the endpoints. That doesn't increase the signal strength across the copper. That is simply protecting the communication that's going over the network, should it actually be working. But if the two sides can't hear each other, a VPN isn't going to help you very much. And using a slower network speed doesn't change the distances available on Ethernet. One thing you'll notice on the Ethernet standards, whether it's 10 megabit or 100 megabit or 1,000 or 10,000, which would be gigabit and 10 gigabit, those types of connections are set on copper as pretty normal distances, 100 meters. And if you slow it down from gigabit to 100 megabit, it's still a 100 meter distance. If you slow it down to 10 megabit, it's still a 100 meter distance as your maximum. So that doesn't help you much either. So here, really the best answer to this question is B, add a line driver to the cable. Well, that was a good one to go through. If you got it wrong, that's okay. You just learned something. The only way you ever learn anything is when something goes wrong, when you've broken something. That's when you really get to know exactly what you know. or need to know about a particular topic. Well, let's bounce back. Here's one that's more of a Windows question. Let's get away from networking and go to a Windows question. This one dealing with permissions. A lot of people emailed me and said, I need some questions about the permissions. And this one asks, what determines the inherited permission of a Windows object? This is a very specific question regarding Windows. Whenever I start getting into Windows permissions questions, they are very specific because they have really a very detailed, this particular topic, of course, is very detailed, but I have some options available for you. So you don't have to know right off the top. What determines the inherited permission of a Windows object? Is it based on the parent object? Is it configured during the Windows login process? Is it administratively set on each specific object? Is it based on the child object? Or is it defined in the local security policy? One of those is going to determine the inherited permission of a Windows object. And if you think you know, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to Socrative.com to the room named Professor Messer. And you're probably already there. I can see a number of you already answering what the actual response to this one might be. This is one where whenever you start working in Windows, especially if you become a Windows administrator, permissions and the objects associated with those permissions or the permissions associated with the objects become very important. You have a lot of people that need access to printers. They need access to drives. They need access to folders. They need access to applications. And you somehow have to make all of this happen inside the Windows operating system. If you know permissions really, really well, this is going to be easy for you. If you're someone who's a little bit sketchy on Windows permissions, it becomes a lot more of a challenge because it is so integrated into the operating system. It's such an important thing to know. If you're really not quite sure about permissions in Windows, make sure you spend some time going through the permissions section in the CompTIA exam objectives. It will tell you exactly the information that you need to know. So let's see how we did with this one. What determines the inherited permission of a Windows object? Well, we got a majority, 51%. Just got over there, 50%, based on the parent object. So if we go with what most of us think it will be based on the parent object. 29%, though, a good chunk of you said it's administratively set on each specific object. And then back to third, half the number of folks, 14%, said it's defined in the local security policy. Hardly anybody said configured during the Windows login process or based on the child object. Permissions. Permissions can be a little bit of a pain, but if we break down for us how these permissions work in Windows, it's really not so bad. Let's look at permissions. We want to talk about explicit permissions and inherited permissions. And you'll recall in this question, I was asking specifically about an inherited permission. So let's break this down and see how it's done. An explicit permission, just as the name implies, means that this is something that we are explicitly configuring. You as the administrator are going into a folder and you are setting up permissions for groups and for users and assigning them rights and permissions. So you are the person doing it. And you're setting up, maybe you're going to a share and you're saying on this share, everybody has access to the share, but only read-only access to the everyone group. That's something where you as the administrator set an explicit permission on that share. But as you can see in this picture, I have a share called music, but then there are folders underneath music. Well, as the administrator, you didn't have to go into every single one of those subfolders. In fact, what if a user had rights to create a folder inside there? What permissions would be associated with that folder? Well, in Windows, what happens is it inherits permissions. You have these inherited permissions that get propagated from the parent object. So if a music folder is created with a certain set of permissions and somebody adds on the 20th century folder into the middle of this and really doesn't change any of the permissions associated with it, it simply inherits what the parent object, the object just above it, had in those cases. So this is one where it becomes really useful to have that flexibility. So you as the administrator don't have to go into every single individual folder that's ever created on a server to set permissions. You imagine what a mess that would be? Instead, we simply inherit based on the parent object. And one thing you'll notice, if you then go into those objects. For instance, maybe instead of setting everyone has access to this folder, we say nobody has access to music. And when you do that, you're explicitly setting a permissions on that folder. And when you do that, an implicit and inherited permission is created. Everything underneath that inherits that X you put on that said nobody has access to the music folder. We're tired of all of this music in the office. Nobody can listen to music anymore. But then you find out there one person would like to have access to one particular folder. Maybe there's one thing that's in here that we would like to allow. So you as the administrator can turn on or change and create an explicit permission. And notice when you did that inside of those folders, normally it would be getting the permissions that were inherited. But because you went in and explicitly set those permissions, it no longer is locked out from everybody in the office. And now at least one group of people can listen to their show tunes. They on the 20th Century soundtrack. So now you've gotten rid of all the other music, but at least you were able to turn on one of those. So this is one where you do need to know the difference between explicit permissions and inherited permissions. And just as the folks in the chat room were guessing, because this is a Windows-related question, this is a 22902 question. So absolutely something important to know on the exam. So for those of you that did answer this one, what determines the inherited permission of a Windows object? It indeed is based on the parent object. So the 51% of you got that one absolutely right. It is not, at least necessarily, set on each specific object. That's why I use the term inherited permission and not an explicit permission that you are configuring or an administratively assigned permission. Instead, you are not administratively setting them on each specific object, or that's all you'd be doing every day. So you don't want to be stuck doing permissions all day. And it has nothing to do with the local security policy and how things are defined. You set Windows object permissions right there in the Windows browser. You go right to the folder, you right mouse click, you look at the properties and go to the security tab, and you can configure all of your permissions that way. So good job, folks who answered based on the parent object A. You guys got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well, I've got one now that's more of a visual daily double. This one is one where you have to answer this question. What interface is this? Now, one thing you'll notice is that your Socrative is going to change a little bit. I'm not giving you multiple choice on this one. Don't answer in the chat room. You need to type it in Socrative. Now, obviously, if you're watching this in the replay, you're not able to type things into Socrative. Socrative is not only available if you're watching this live, and you can always watch this live on professormesser.com/live, or look at the calendar when we have our live events at professormesser.com/calendar, or just click the calendar link at the top of the Professor Messer website. Now, I'm asking for a very specific thing on this interface. I need to know as much detail as possible. Some of you are putting in as much detail as possible on here. Some people are putting half the amount of detail that I would like on this particular question. I'm not going to show you these quite yet because it would give it away a bit. But this is where you will get questions like this on the exam. They might show you a picture and ask what it is, and you have to fill in the blank. They might give you multiple choice. They might give you a matching question. They might give you a bunch of pictures, and you have to match the picture with what the name is. Or they'll give you a list of names, and you have to fill in the blanks for what those are. The exam doesn't have to be multiple choice. There is also those performance-based questions that you will find in there as well. So what is that? What is it? What is it? What is it? You should be able to find these interfaces instantly on your 22901 exam. It becomes pretty important to know what are all of these interfaces. You need to be able to recognize it if it's in front of you. It's an important part of the exam objectives. Here's a better picture of it. We'll go really big there. Maybe that will help on your screen, being able to see exactly what that is. Some of you are right on the money. Some of you are pretty good knowing what those are. You've been able to really see, what is that? What is that? What is that? And you're like, oh, I know what that is. I recognize what some of those things are. Maybe some of you know what this is. So let's see how we're doing with this. I see some folks that are coming through. Let's have a look at what people are saying. SATA power, SATA power connector, SATA data. A lot of SATA. Google says no. Don't know what that is. You see, you need to 10i this stuff. Actually, this is one that I made, so it's probably not in the 10i. SATA power, SATA power, SATA power, SATA power, SATA data. So let's take SATA in general. Oh, somebody said VGA. I don't think it's VGA. It's not eSATA either. Most of you are right on the money with what this one happens to be. Well done. That is indeed SATA power. If you look at the SATA connections, in fact, you'll notice that when you're going through that, you're looking at the back of your SATA device, whether it's an SSD or a hard drive or whatever it happens to be, you have these two connectors for SATA. One is the data, one is the power. And you would think that the data, because SATA is really transferring a ton of information, you would think that the data would be the bigger connector, but it's not. SATA, the name S in SATA is serial, and a serial connection really just has one set of traffic going in and one set of traffic going out. There's effectively just a two-lane highway there sending that data back and forth. So you don't need a lot of room. You don't need a lot of a bus there just to be able to transfer data. It's really the power that requires more connections here to run whatever that device happens to be, because we have so many different voltages that are required for SATA. And not all devices use all of those voltages, but you still need a place for it on there. So this is one where, in this case, SATA would be the correct answer. And if, to be more specific or most specific, it would be SATA power. Now, I don't have a way to compile that, but you could see from what we were looking at and the folks that were answering on here that indeed you folks did pretty well, right on the money. I think I'd give you a S for SATA. SATA, probably I'll give you half credit. If you said SATA power, you're absolutely right. If you said SATA data, nope, it's not the data, it's the power on those. So nice job on getting those done. Well, you would know it was SATA data or SATA power if you had my course notes, of course. I have gone through every single one of my videos and I've written down all of the notes from every single one. Now, you can, of course, do this yourself. You, of course, need a book, you need the videos, but sometimes you either don't have time to make your own notes, or maybe you'd like the notes with all of the graphics and all of the tables and all of the pictures that I have in my videos. I've already compiled them all for you in a PDF that you can download immediately. This contains, of course, all of those interfaces. It contains all of those connections. It contains all of the details about operating systems. It contains some troubleshooting tips. It's that sanity check, that thing that you need before walking into the exam. It doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace videos. It doesn't replace Q&A. It's a great way to have a set of notes available right in front of you. So here's the course notes, 1-4. Oh, these are my 801 and 802. These aren't even the right course notes. What's going on here? Someone's going to have to be fired. And that's me, because that's the person who put them up here. Let's show you the 900 series course notes. Let's just do the 901, since we were just looking at all of those pictures of things. Obviously, if you are someone in those other countries needing the 800 series, there are 800 series course notes as well. These are the 900 series course notes. These are a compilation of both of them together, a total of 43 pages. In fact, we were just looking at all those different interfaces. I'm going to scroll, look at all this stuff. There's the different interfaces. So there's SATA power and SATA data. You can see eSATA and get a view of that as well. So here's one where if you need the information, it's all in this PDF file. And it's one where you can absolutely get everything rolled up into one single piece. And it's another way to help contribute back to the website. They're only $10 a piece. It's another way that people have said, I want to help give some money to keep the website going. Well, I don't take donations. I like to give you something in return. So this might be something that you might want to use to help support. I want to thank everybody, by the way, who continues to buy these course notes and the books and the other things. I would not be able to keep this going without you. It's like our own little GoFundMe, except you get something back immediately that can help you pass the exam and get a better job. That's really the best of both worlds, I think. If you want more information on these course notes, you can find them at professormester.com/A+CN for A+ course notes. Great thing to have available. And of course, thank you for your ongoing support with those. Let's get back to the questions. I've got to get through these. I'm talking too much this month, am I? So let's keep going with this. Now we're back to a 22902 question, and this is a troubleshooting question, because this is one where your Windows computer is moving very slowly. Well, who would have thought that would happen? That never happens. So now we need to troubleshoot it. So the question is, which of these would be the best way to view real-time metrics? Well, it makes sense that that's what we want to do. We want to see where the slowdown's coming from. So which one of these would be? I have a multiple choice. We're back to multiple choice on these for this. We have Event Viewer, Performance Manager, Task Manager, Windows Update, and Reliability Monitor. One of these really is the best way to view real-time metrics. In fact, if I look at this list, really, there's really only one answer. Maybe two if I really am pushing it. Three if you want to be really flexible with the different definitions of things. But the question's very specific. And that's why it's really important when you're taking your exam to be very careful about the questions. Make sure you read them through completely. Make sure that you're able to really understand what's being asked of you. When I take an exam, I am always in one of these questions missing a not. It says, in fact, which one of these would not be the best way to view real-time metrics? So we need to make sure we're reading the questions so that we can answer properly. If you have time, it's always nice to go back and reread every question, even if you think you got that one 100% correct, just to see if, wait a second, that said not. I thought it didn't have the not there, so I answered different. You may be able to score some points just by checking your work before you are done. Well, if you think you know the answer, go to Scrata.com, to the room name Professor Messer, and maybe you will be able to. You know, that's a good point. Your Windows machine should not be moving at all, should it? Should be staying in one place. You know what I'm saying with that. It's moving very slowly. It's operating. The system is a bit sluggish. You know where I was going with that. The chat room's being a little bit salty today. A little bit on the end of that. So let's see how we're doing. Let's see how we answered this one. How do we do? Well, we're a little torn, actually. So only 52% will go with the majority said Task Manager, but right behind them, 41% said Performance Manager. And then 8% said Event Viewer, and nobody said Windows Update, and only 1% said Reliability Monitor. Wouldn't it be great if it was Reliability Monitor? It would be, but it's not in this particular case. When we're troubleshooting something like slow system performance, Task Manager is going to be the first place you go. You want to be able to really get an understanding of what's happening right now, second to second. You need to understand what all of the different processes are that are running on your computer. Are any of the processors running at 100% utilization? If so, what are they? Is it an extended time? Is it constantly at 100% utilization? This is the way you tell. Are any of these processes doing a lot of disk I/O, input and output to your drive, storage devices? It may be spending more time putting information back and forth on your disk than actually doing anything, and that would slow everything down on this system. This is a good way to really go through and understand exactly what's in your Task Manager, being able to break it down. And you can see processes, you can see the network information, network utilization, and the information going back and forth. And even in the latest Windows 8 and even Windows 10, which isn't technically on the exam, but the Windows 8 and Windows 8.1 Task Manager is even improved over the Windows 7 Task Manager. So there's just improvements that Microsoft continues to put into this so that you can really get a real-time view. And if we go back to the question, that was the key. In this question, if we read it very carefully, your Windows computer is moving very slowly. Which of these would be the best way to view real-time metrics? Real-time metrics. And we're talking about in real time what's happening immediately. I'm not talking about every 5 seconds or every 15 seconds or every 30 seconds or looking at things over a long period of time. I want to see right now what's going on. And the best way to see what's going on right now is to be able to look at your Task Manager. So in this case, the Task Manager really would be the best choice. Performance Manager can give you metrics, but they are metrics over a longer period of time, and the sampling time is much longer. You can configure Performance Manager to have shorter metric times, but that's not the best way to view real-time metrics. And even then, you have to really bring everything in that you'd like to see. You have to choose the metrics that you'd like to find over time. It's not going to look at every metric possibly available. Task Manager already does. There's nothing to configure. You just bring up Task Manager. It shows you everything. It really is the best answer in this case. Would not be Event Viewer either. Event Viewer shows us a list of what's in your logs after the fact. So something's already occurred. We want to know yesterday, was there a problem with an application? That would be Event Viewer. Nobody said Windows Update. You're absolutely correct. Would not be Windows Update. Only 1% said Reliability Monitor, which is actually a really nice utility if somebody's having continuing problems with a particular application or their system. you can run reliability monitor, which effectively parses through your event viewer logs to give you more of a really consolidated view of problems with the computer. It's a really nice tool that maybe we just don't use enough. Reliability monitor. Try it sometime. Run it on your machine. It's pretty nifty, the stuff you can see inside of reliability monitor. So in fact, indeed, Task Manager, if you answered C, you got this one absolutely right. Now, for those of you that watch these for continuing education credits, this is an important thing to remember, is that you want to use the keyword for the November A+ 2016 study group is Task Manager. That is the keyword for the month. Now, the way that you would get your continuing education unit, this is just as important as knowing what the keyword is you go to either the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a Contact Us link right there in the top or the bottom. Make sure you put into that Contact Us link form your name, your email. Make sure you specify that it is the November 2016 A+ study group for continuing education units, and that the special keyword for this month is Task Manager. And that way you will be able to, I'll see the message come in. It comes right to my inbox. I'll be able to parse through it. I read any comments that you put in there, and then I will send you back a digitally signed email certifying that you indeed sat here for this hour to get these continuing education unit credits. And usually it takes me about a week to turn these around. So a lot of people will send these, and the next day they'll send an email. Where's my continuing education unit? Well, it's coming. I will get there. I bundle them all together, and I just shoot through them as quickly as possible. So that's one that comes in pretty handy for continuing education. Secret code word of the month, Task Manager. Let's do another question. Let's keep this going. The next question, which of these is not a valid IP address? I have some IP addresses here for us to go through, and I want you to tell me which one isn't valid. Now, don't spoil it in the chat room. We want to instead go through this list. Is it 1.1.1.1? Is it 10.17.256.177? Is it 127.001? Is it 192.168.168.168? Or is it 224.77.12.89? Which one of these would not be a valid IP address? Which one? Maybe you know. And if you do, you can go to Socrative.com to the student login to the Professor Messer room, and you can answer. It's not tricky. People in the chat room are telling me it's a trick question. It's not a trick question. These are all funny looking addresses. So which one is there's one that's not valid IP address. So you'll be able to figure it out. This is one, by the way, that a lot of people will say on the exam was tricky. There were trick questions. And I think a lot of people see questions, or they're not prepared for questions where they're asking for the best answer, or they're not expecting to see what's the first thing you should do during the troubleshooting process. And I think that throws people sometimes. So make sure you get very used to understanding some of those things and getting used to answering what the best response might be. Even when presented with three things that could possibly be the answer, which one is really the best? And if you know your stuff, the answer is really going to jump right out at you. Oh, well, that one's clearly the best. I think people that maybe aren't quite sure about a topic may think it's a trick question. They may think it goes one or two or three different ways. But I found on the exams, they're very, very specific with what they're doing. So hopefully that will be something that that you will be able to parse through as well and figure out. So let's see how we did with this one. Which of these is not a valid IP address? Well, we're torn again. We've got everybody answering a lot of different things. 45% of you, not a majority, but the highest number we have is 10.17.256.177. 24%, nearly a quarter of you said 1.1.1.1. 16% said 127.0.0.1. 11% said 224.77.12.89. And 6% said 192.168.168.168. Well, what in the world would the answer be? We're all sort of going through this. Well, to get the answer, we really need to understand how an IPv4 address is laid out. These are really, if we were to break out the addresses, the way the computer sees them is all in binary. And this is how the address is really laid out binary wise. So maybe you will be able to see this as well if we break this down. You can see that there are 4 different what we call octets. That's because there are 8 bits, and that's where that term comes from, is having 8 bits in each one of these sections. So it's 8 bits, dot 8 bits, dot 8 bits, dot 8 bits. We're used to seeing this in a decimal form. We don't usually see these in binary form because we're humans. We don't really deal with the way we look at things from that perspective. So if we look at and see, we got 192.168.1.31, the computer sees 110000001010101001. It sees just a bunch of ones and zeros. So whenever we start looking at this, you'll notice, by the way, that because there are 8 bits here, if we were to do our binary math, and of course you should know binary math for your A+ exam. If you don't, make sure you watch my video on binary math. If you take 8 ones and put them all next to each other, it gives us a total value of 256 possible answers, but the range is between 0 and 255. You can't have a decimal 256 here. The highest number decimal you can have is one that goes up to 255. So that's why if you were to look at a question asking about a legitimate IP address, it needs to be 4 octets here, or 4 numbers separated by a decimal point. You've got numbers that will range anywhere between, well, 0 and 255. But when you look at IP addresses, one of the things you'll notice is that IP addresses will not start with a 0, and they will not start with it's the 0 range, 0.0.0.0. That entire range is one that's not used; it's reserved. But anything else is really in the clear. So if we look at these and really break this down, 46% said 10.17.256.177. This is really the right answer. The 46% of you got that one absolutely right. And if we now know the reason for this, it looks like a fine address, except there's a 256 right there in the 3rd octet. And that 256 obviously is a number you can't have in an octet. There are not enough bits to make a 256. You'd have to have 9 bits available to make a 256, and that's why that particular one got 47% of you. Now, 1.1.1.1 is a perfectly valid IP address. 127.0.0.1 is a loopback address. In fact, everybody's computer has this IP address on it, so that's absolutely a valid IP address. 192.168.168.168 is a little redundant, but it is a valid IP address that you could have on your network. And 224.77.12.89 is a multicast address, something you don't commonly see a person's computer having, but it is a valid IP address that can be used for a number of different things on the network. And so your correct answer in this particular case is B. If you answered B, 10.17.256.177, you got that one absolutely right in that particular case. Well done. Yes, it's one of those problems on the exam. You got to read through every single one of these things and really get it just right. And that's one of the things that I always find a challenge, is getting everything really read through extremely well. Now, if you're somebody who would like to have more hands-on with all of these questions, especially with Windows, you'd like to do your own tests with permissions and rights. You want to set some rights and permissions. You want to be able to run some IP address settings in there. Fortunately, the folks at GTS Learning have everything covered for you because they have the Live Labs available. This is the Live Lab settings that they are able to do, that are able to really have you step through every single one of these exam requirements and be able to understand more on how you yourself can get some of these things running on your computer without having tons of equipment. You don't need all of these different operating systems. You don't need to have computers ready to go. You don't even have to do your own labs. It's already there and available for you. There's even special pricing for these live labs at professormesser.com/live labs. I'm logged into the live labs right now, and I'm running one on configuring a Windows firewall. And there's a domain controller, a Windows 7 device, gateway. There's a bunch of other machines on here. You can even see what the diagram is of this particular lab. And then you can step through all of the different settings, all of the different things you need to know for this lab. The first one is configuring the firewall rules, and they step you through step by step of exactly what you need to know to be able to run this. It's all done in a virtual environment. It's a full-blown Windows system. You can make mistakes. You can do things that aren't in the lab on this particular case. It's all in this view. I really like using these. Notice this is all even in a browser. I didn't have to load any software, and boom, I've got a Windows computer ready to go that I can use. And it's very fast to be able to use it too. I've got everything I need right in front of me, and I can step through all of the computers here and even scroll through the different computers and be able to use them. Because it's a remote desktop, it's so quick and so fast and so easy to use. It's just something that makes it very simple. Let's go to those Windows 7 devices. There's the gateway. They're all booting up here on the screen, and I can sit here in my browser wherever I happen to be and use these labs and step through learning all of these different firewall rules, going through all of the different Windows installation configurations, everything. Very useful to have that there. There's a lot that you can work with on these live labs, and there's even special pricing for them as well. If you follow my link, make sure you go to professormesser.com/live labs, and they have, there's also an ebook. By the way, this ebook from GTS Learning is the ebook I use to create all of my videos. It's my primary source. So they wrote the book. I use their book to help write my videos as another data source. And then they took my videos when I was done and they embedded them into the book. So you can read a section in the book, and then there's a link you can click on to watch my video that is about what you just read. So it's a great way to blend these things together. Now, they also have a special price of $99. You get the ebook and the live labs. There's also Q&A that comes with this, 400 practice questions, everything really in one place. So you've got a book, you've got videos, you've got the labs. It's all here. You can find out all about it at professormesser.com/live labs. And I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning for their support. Been working with them for years, and they have been fantastic at supporting what we're doing here at Messer Studios. Thank goodness. Well, let's go to another question, shall we? I've got more here that we can step through. Let's go to this question, which is, which of these would be most associated with FOSS? With FOSS. FOSS, whatever that is. Now you have to know what FOSS is. Don't Google it. Stop Googling. Take a stab at it. Just take a guess. You will be able to figure it out. Which of these would be most associated with FOSS? Would it be that a user can compile their own executable? Would it be that you can't use the software without external permission? Would it be that the software cannot be used for commercial use? Would it be that the software source code is private? Or would it be that the software cannot be distributed by a third party? Maybe you know. See, if you don't know what it is, that becomes a little more of an issue. But take a guess at it. This is exactly the situation you'll be in on the exam, of course. If you're presented with something you don't recognize, you need to at least be able to try to answer the question. So maybe you can go through this list and figure out which one of these things really applies in this particular case and trying to figure those out. Maybe you know what it is. Maybe you're very accustomed to FOSS and whatever it happens to be, or maybe it's something. Yes, it is an acronym. See, there's a hint. It is an acronym, that FOSS. Just go to Socrative.com. You'll be able to answer the question in there of what it is. I think it's another one where we're really not sure what that acronym happens to be in this particular case. Maybe so. Maybe some of you do know. And working through it. This is one, whenever you're taking a stab, try to go through the list of all of these. Maybe there are some things on here you recognize, like, well, I know what that is, so maybe that's not FOSS. Maybe FOSS is something else entirely. So this would be a good one to take a guess at and try to figure out. In fact, let's see how we did with this one. We're going to keep this thing moving here. Well, we're all over the place. We're tied for first, maybe tied for second. 35% of you, though, said the user can compile their own executable. So if we want to go with the one that's not a majority, but at least everybody who's answering here, or at least the largest number of people answering, said A. But right behind it is really almost a four-way tie for second. It would be you can't use the software without external permission. The software can't be used for commercial use. The software source code is private. The software can't be distributed by a third party. So really, this is where we need to learn more about what these acronyms really mean. As you can tell by the answers, we're really looking at something associated with using software or compiling software or something relating to software usability. And this is where you get into really not the fun part of technology. It's more of the administrative part of technology, where we really have to know about open source software, closed source software, commercial software, being able to really understand the differences between all of these. If you're someone who purchases software for your organization, you already know that when you're purchasing the software, before you buy it, you ask to see a copy of the licensing agreement, the end user licensing agreement, because it becomes so important for you to know how you can use this software. It becomes a little bit easier if it's something like FOSS, which is free and open source software. Now, FOSS has both the term free and open source. Of course, open source software doesn't necessarily mean that it is free. Open source software means the source is open and available for you to view. It means you can go through the source code yourself and make sure that the source code is something that's okay for you to run in your environment. You can feel comfortable that there's no security issues, that nobody's put a secret backdoor into it, that they're not collecting information associated with that. But to have free and open source software means there really is no charge to be able to use this software. And because the source code is available, you can grab the source code, make sure you know what it looks like, and you can compile the executable yourself. That way you know exactly what's going to be running on your computers rather than using an executable that has been compiled by someone else. That's not what you want to do either. I mentioned whenever you're purchasing software, you want to get the end user licensing agreement because that will define how you're able to use the software. Can you use this software for commercial use? Can people install multiple versions of the software onto their systems? How long can the software be used? Is there any other requirement that the manufacturer gives to you that says you must do this if you want to be able to use this software? You might also see a licensing term called DRM, Digital Rights Management. This is one that's very controversial on the internet because people don't like DRM. This is one that is a software that allows or disallows you to be able to view software, to run software, to view video, to listen to music. You're only able to do that if you meet the terms of the licensing agreement. And all of those terms are not something that you determine. It's something that a third party or a piece of software or hardware determines. So you're not in control of whether you can listen to that music or watch that video or run that program. You have to have something else that allows you to do that. And that's the digital rights management to be able to run those pieces. All of these things are important with licensing. So if we go back to the question, which of these would be most associated with free and open source software? Well, you can't use the software without external permission. That sounds like DRM to me, so it would not be B. The software cannot be used for commercial use. That would be something in the terms of the end user license agreement. The software source code is private. That's something associated with closed source software, would not be open source software. And here we're talking about free and open source. And the software cannot be distributed by a third party. Well, the distribution terms are probably something written up in the end user license agreement. That's not what we're looking for associated with FOSS. In fact, the 38% of you that answered A got this absolutely correct. The user can compile their own executable, and they can do that because it is open source software that allowed you to be able to make that happen. So something important to know whenever you're trying to work with different pieces of software and get those running. And DRM is always a challenge. DRM, there's advantages to people using DRM. There's advantages to people not using DRM. Now there's a whole conversation about DRM going on in the chat room. And I can tell you all about what I think of DRM in the after show if you're at all interested. Let's keep it going, though. We can fit another question in before the hour's out, I think. Here's a question. Which of the following is common with laptop power adapters? You've been in our chat room anytime this week, I think it is. Last week it was. We talked about this quite a bit. This came up. So which of the following is common with laptop power adapters? They can be used on international power systems. They provide AC power to the laptop. The amperage value must match the voltage. It must be used in conjunction with a power inverter, or it uses multiple rails to provide laptop power. Which of these is common with a laptop power adapter? If you think you know the answer, you can, of course, go to Socrative.com to the student login, and you can go to room Professor Messer. Make sure you spell it right, Professormesser. Professor Messer. I keep saying I'm going to make that smaller, don't I? A shorter name, and I never do. That's one of those things. Every shorter name I tried, in fact, is already taken. You have to reserve your room name. And somebody else has reserved all the ones I think of. And then I start thinking about other terms. That's Room Banana. We're going to go to Room Banana. That makes no sense either. Nobody will ever find it. So right now it's Professor Messer. I know it's not no thought is going into this at all, it seems. And yet here we are. Which of the following come with laptop power adapter. Everybody uses these. If you have laptop power, being able to work through those. It does come in something that's very common. We don't even think about it really. You know, what is that doing? What is the laptop power doing? Where's it located? What's it look like? You just plug it in, it works. That's all you care about on your laptop, isn't it? That's one where we really need to know more details about laptop power. And for the A+, especially the 901 exam, you need to know a lot about mobile devices and laptops and how the power is used in all of those. So perhaps you do know, maybe you don't. We'll have to figure out all of those pieces and how they all operate. Let's see how we did with this one. No, banana is not the Socratic room for the after show. I'm sorry I even said it, because now we're just going to go down that very bad hill. Let's see how we did. Well, 37% said it provides AC power to the laptop. So we don't have a majority, but at least we have a primary, the largest number answering. Kind of a tie for second. Can be used on international power systems and must be used in conjunction with a power inverter. Sorry, those are two completely different things. Power inverters are different than power converters. Sounds the same, but it's really different. The amperage value must match the voltage. Only 6% and only 7% said uses multiple rails to provide laptop power. So what would it be? What would it be? One has to wonder as we go through here. BANANAS. Which of the following is common with laptop power adapters? One thing that is very common with laptop power adapters is they are most all of them are auto switching. Or it's not even auto switching as much as it is one that is able to use a wide range of voltages. So if you look at the back of your power adapter, can I even zoom up on this? Let's see. Zoom. It's a little bit fuzzy, but you can kind of see the input, the power going into the power adapter is anywhere between 100 and 240 volts of squiggly line. And the squiggly line, as you know from watching my videos, is AC. So your input here is AC. The output of this in this particular power adapter is 19.5 volts of DC. The solid line with the little lines under it is the code for DC. It's a special symbol for DC, running at 4.62 amps. It even has a little diagram of the power connector, which part of the power is positive and which part of the power is negative. So you've got this wide range. This single AC adapter, this power adapter for your laptop, can take anywhere from 120 to 240, 220 volts. So this is great to be able to have this here. That's because in some countries, they run at 120 volts of AC. In other countries, they run at 220 volts AC. And you never know what you might plug into. Is it 110 or 220? 110 or 220? You may even see it written as 115 to 230, just because they like to have a big range available. But the 110 is generally what we have here in the United States. But what if we took our laptop to another country where the voltages were different, where they ran on 220? Well, in this particular case, with this particular device, this particular power adapter, you'll have to look at yours. It is already supported on 220 volts. It says right on the power adapter itself that it supports that voltage. All you need now is the right connector to allow you to plug into the wall. You may have to purchase some adapters, not converters. We're not changing the voltages. We're not making the voltage different, because this power adapter doesn't need to have the voltage different. It can run at 220 just as easily it can run at 110. So it becomes very useful to have that there to be able to plug it in. You just simply put a different connector on the end of it, plug it in, and now you're done. You don't have to do anything special. You just have to change what those little connectors on the end are. And if you're someone who travels internationally, I used to travel a lot internationally, it's nice to have that. You just have to find the right connector, plug it in. Your laptop's going to work in the conference room, no problem. You don't have to do anything special to be able to do that. This is effectively taking the AC out of the wall and providing your laptop with DC power. That's really what that thing does. Now, the reason we don't usually have these on our larger desktop systems is that functionality is built into the power supply that's inside the case. Our laptops aren't very big, so effectively we've taken the power supply and kind of stuck it outside the case, and that's really what that's doing for us. The AC is the alternating current, and the DC would be the direct current and how it works. Pretty interesting in how all of those things work together. So if we look at the answers, 38% said provides AC power to the laptop. It does not. It provides DC power to the laptop. So unfortunately, although most of us answered B, B is not the correct answer in this particular case. The amperage must match the voltage. In fact, the amperage is never, almost never, rarely, if ever, would match the voltage going through. Imagine 220 amps going through your 220 connector. The amps usually are a much smaller number than the voltage happens to be, and the voltage amps are related, but they're not the same thing, so they're not going to match. Must be used in conjunction with a power inverter. Does not need to be used in conjunction with a power inverter. That would be effectively you converting it to DC so that you can convert it back to AC, which is what an inverter does. And using multiple rails to provide laptop power, it doesn't. It usually provides one set of amperages, and it will tell you on your power supply what that output amperage happens to be. So if you're the folks that answered A, can be used on international power systems, you got that one absolutely right. In fact, almost always those laptop power supplies can indeed be used on international power systems. This is one where you just need to have your adapter. You go to the country that you're going to use the laptop, and you'll just need to be able to have the right connector to plug into the UK system because the plugs are different. There's plenty of options on there to be able to have plenty of options available to purchase so you have the right inverters. Well, if you're going through these questions and you're wondering, where do all these questions come from? Where do all these topics come from? What do I need to know to pass this exam? The folks at CompTIA have already written up exactly what you need to know. You need to make sure you get the exam objectives. This tells you everything you need to pass the exam. If anybody ever asks me, I'm taking my exam next week, what tip can you give me? The one I always give is download the objectives and use them as a checklist. If you can check off everything that's in these objectives, you're ready for the exam. And if you can check off everything that you know it's in these objectives, you'll pass your exam just fine. I don't think that's going to be a problem at all for you. You should never go into exam. I hate it when people come out of an exam and say, boy, they asked some things I wasn't expecting. And I'll ask what the topics were related to. Well, they were in here. You should have known. You should have had those already there. If you don't have the objectives, stop what you're doing with your studies. Go download the objectives, read through them. They should be your primary list when you're preparing for your exam. Well, we do one of these study groups every month. Can you believe it? I actually do multiple ones a month. This is the A+ for the month. Next week, we do a Network Plus study group. The week after that, we do Security Plus study group. I'm trying to find other things to do for study groups and have these live events to have these here. But my next one, if you're watching this live or sometime during this month, is on December the 7th of 2016, a day that will indeed live in infamy. In the United States, it's an important day because it's my wedding anniversary. How did that happen? Yes, that's why they call it a day that will live in infamy. And so I'll be here on my anniversary giving you A+ questions. And if you ever, maybe it's after December or you just forgot the date, you can always go to the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll know exactly when you'll be able to do this, and when the next event's going to be, and when the live things are happening. It's all on there. And of course, you can always check in with me throughout the month. Well, there's always things going on Twitter. There's always things going on YouTube. There's always things happening with those pieces. It's one where we got a lot going on. You can always go to professormesser.com/Twitter/Facebook/ Instagram / whatever it is, and you'll find me, I'm sure. Don't forget about my course notes. You can find them at professormesser.com/A+CN. And of course, my thanks to the folks at GTS Learning. Make sure you check out the live labs at professormesser.com/live labs and my books, and both the 901, I didn't even put the 902 on here, Pop Quiz Collection. Both are available at professormesser.com/PQC. And of course, I'll be here next month. When, of course, you can show up for Network Plus next week. We can show up for Security Plus the week after that. I'll be able to do those as well. And be sure to stick around. Although the formal Q&A is done for today, I open up the phone lines for the after show. Be able to step through all of those pieces too. Be able to answer your questions from the chat room as well. But if you have to go, I can appreciate that as well. I appreciate you hanging out for the hour and stepping through these questions with us. I hope to see you back next time on the study group. Thanks for joining us this time. Have a great rest of the day. Well, that was a lot in a very short period, wasn't it? In the chat room, how often are the A+ course notes updated? They are updated every time CompTIA updates their exam objectives, and they rarely do. I will sometimes change wording. Somebody will send me a note and say, this is vague, or something doesn't look right, and I'll tweak some different things. So I might put a new version out every month, maybe. It's after a while, we've got a pretty good set of things there, and then nothing needs to be changed. They're static. So, but you can always log into your member login and download the latest version or see what the latest version is. It's always there. That's never going away for you. Let's open up the phone lines. How's this work? How does this thing work? Let's start a show. Of course, you can ask questions in the chat room as well. Something to go to. Let me have a look at and log into the Skype. This is the fun part because I don't have a producer. I do all of this myself, so you get to join me in going through all of this. And it says, does it? Oh,
screener line. Please enter your.
Okay, put in the thing. What number am I putting in? I'm putting in. Here we go. Oh, don't give you the noises.
Enter your 6-digit.
You DMTF decoders. Let's see.
Welcome.
Welcome. There's already a caller that's in there. Hopefully, oh yeah, you're already on hold. So I'll get to you in just a moment. And being able to get there, of course, I'll be answering questions in the chat room as well. You can, of course, go through and ask questions there. I'll be breaking down all of those as we go through this as well. And here, how about be nice if we had the phone number. There it is, 855-785-7545. It's 855-785-RJ45. One of those for those pieces. So maybe you would like to call in. You're more than welcome to. And if you do call in, you'll be like our first caller today from the 661 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. What's your name?
My name's Corey.
Hey, Corey. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
I just have personal concern.
Well, here we go. Tell me your concerns, Corey.
Well, I just don't know how ready I am. Like, for example, there's a course called online course called Test Out, which it's a very good course, but
I've heard of it.
Yeah, they have within the A+ course that they have at the very end, like they have like pseudo practice exams, like A+ practice exams.
Okay.
And in them, I the first time I just took one, I got like a 74% like a month ago. Now that I've been studying, I got like, it may have just because I've been a bit distracted, but I got like a 67.
It's going the wrong direction, Corey.
Yeah, yes. But with I also have your course book, and with, like, for example, here in the study group, I got all the questions correct. And one thing I do notice is I'm not entirely sure if all the questions on Test Out are completely like within the exam objectives. Like some of it asks about token ring, stuff like that.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's way outside the scope of the exam object. That's way outside the scope of modern technology.
Yeah. So I was just wondering if I'm feeling good with, like, for example, your questions or some other like exam compass or whatever. I don't know. That was just a little demoralizing.
Sure.
With,
yeah.
My score at Test Out.
If you are getting an exam,
if
you're getting an exam from somebody and it's asking you questions about token ring, you're going to get them wrong. Nobody's talked about token ring in forever. Back when token ring was a thing, I was the moderator of the token ring frequently asked questions file on the Comp Decom Lands Token Ring Usenet news group. So there you go. That should give you an idea of just the age we're talking about here. So it's not a technology anyone really uses anymore. It has not been in the exam objectives. Probably in the last 12 years. I mean, it's a really old technology. So if you're getting questions like that, I would expect that there are probably some other questions in there that are probably not anything that's up to the latest specifications. One thing that I did with all the questions on my website and all the questions in my pop quiz collections is I went through every single one of them. So there's 1,300 questions. I read through all of them. And a lot of them I changed, a lot I edited, a lot I deleted because they just weren't up to date with the latest exam objectives, or I had to update them to get them updated. It was a question about Windows XP. Well, now we need a question about Windows 7 because Windows XP obviously is not in the 900 series exams anymore. Even if it's some folks in the chat room are going, well, there's two different versions on Test Out. There's an 800 series. Even if it was the 800 series, there's no token ring in the 800 series. So
I
that's
was thinking the 900 one.
yeah. I
could be wrong. I might have been thinking like token ring topology or something like
Even-
that. Like
even so,
network topologies.
You should
Yeah.
never even see that show up. It's one of those that's outside the scope of that and being able to run with it. But it is a challenge. And I tell people that Q&A is one of the best ways to really test yourself to see if you're ready to take the exam. And I think people should do that. But it is really a challenge to find a good group of questions to test yourself against because not everybody spends time making sure their questions really apply to the latest set of objectives. And maybe you ran into that or not. I've not seen the test out questions. I have no idea. We're really just going on some of the things you've mentioned here. One of the things that you can do, as kind of your sanity check, would be to grab the exam objectives and just make sure that the questions that you're being asked really does apply back to those exam objectives. You'll notice in my book, whenever you answer a question, I put the exact objective that the question came from, and I put a link to the video where you can watch to see what the objective is about, because I want you to see the feedback that says, no, this really is in the objectives and you should really know about it. There's probably other good sources. I think you mentioned another exam site on the internet. Which one were you using?
I was using Exam Compass, and
Okay.
a month ago I used Crucial Exams. I should go back to that one too.
So those Exam Compass and those on the internet, I've not used them myself, but people have said that it's a pretty good set of questions. So that would be a pretty good one to use if you're getting ones there. There is also a number of books that are out there. I think Exam Cram has a set of books that are just questions. And that's another book as well that's really good because theirs are pretty good. Not everything in there is 100%. But I found those books to be pretty good as well. This is Exam Cram has a lot of different kinds of books. This is the Exam Cram Practice Questions book for A+, which is a good one. I think that'd be a good barometer to use. And I think you're right. I think what you're thinking there about the questions that you're getting from Test Out may not be exactly with the latest set of exam objectives. I think you're probably about right on that one.
Okay.
So hopefully
oh yeah. Go.
the one more thing
I
is
just
that
wanted to mention with the-
thing I always tell
Okay, you
people
go,
is that
sorry.
you should go to the exam objectives. Just go through the objectives. If you can explain to another person what this exam objective means and check it off of your list, that's a good way to test yourself, even without not having some of those questions there. So it's just another thing to consider.
Okay. I just one thing I wanted to mention was like with let's say your book. I never strictly like tested myself, which is something I should do. But if I'm going at worst, I'm getting like 80%
It's pretty good.
on your questions on the book. So, yeah, it was just slightly demoralizing with the test out thing. But yeah, I'll take your advice. And thank you for that, by the way.
I think you're on the right track. You keep working through those, get the questions down, go back over the ones you miss in these books and the ones you missed in Test Out and anywhere else. Don't worry so much about the things you're getting right. Really focus on the ones that you missed. Go learn everything you need to know about why you missed that question, and I think you're going to be in good shape.
Okay. Thank you for everything, Professor Messer.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling, Corey. There is, I think that's one of the best things you can do too, is go through the questions that you miss. That's where you need to study and get those there. There were not token ring questions in the 600 series exam, I don't think. We'd have to go back and really look at the 600 series exam to be able to do that. And in fact, I have a 600 series set of questions. I wonder if I still have all of my 600 local on this machine. I probably don't. I have the 700 series. I'd have to go into my my network attached storage and be able to break those out. But I still have all of my 600 series. You can watch all my 600 series videos. They're still out on YouTube. I keep them there. Everything's out there. Everything, 600 series, 700, 800, now the 900, they're all out there to be able to look at. So it's something I like to have out and available because it's a little scary to go back and look at the production value. They're not HD. I looked different back then. It was at a different studio completely with different technology. Same microphone. Some things worked well from the very beginning. The microphone was a good one. There are, in fact, in chat room, people are saying, and they're correct, hey, some people are still running Token Ring. It's a much, much fewer than it was 5 years ago. But there are indeed in the deep, dark recesses of some people's data centers are some systems that are connected with a single Token Ring MAU, a multi-station access unit, a MAU, we called it. And the MAU was one where you connect all the Token Ring devices together. It was like a hub or switch. It was more of a hub for Token Ring. And did not, we didn't use coax for everything. That Type 1 cable is something that went away pretty quick. Almost everybody was using twisted pair for Token Ring, just like Ethernet. So it's not that old to be able to work through there. So sure, I'm sure somebody's using Token Ring, but it is a technology that you never see really in use anymore. And certainly not something prevalent enough that you would need to know the intricacies of how it's connected, how it works, and what cables it uses. Nope. No. You find the old guy who used to run that stuff and they'll tell you. Call me. I'll tell you all about Token Ring. That's where I really started using technology with networking was on Token Ring, not Ethernet. We were talking earlier. What do I think of the ISTQB certification? Well, I don't because I have no idea what that is. ISTQB, did that one sneak under the radar somewhere? That'd be interesting to know. What's there? Oh, does Cybex have Token Ring still in their book? You have these books that you create and you update them every time a new exam comes out and you hate to remove content. But why would you put Token Ring in the content of a book that has nothing to do with anything? Isn't that weird? They do that. It's like they don't even read the book to be able. Oh, QA cert. I am the wrong guy to ask about QA. Not my thing. Generally, see QA more on the not the IT side. Primarily, what I do is IT related instructions. All of my career has really been on the IT side. There's also the computer science side, the CS side. Computer science usually focuses on application development, programming languages, building code, building these object-oriented systems and testing them and making sure they work not only with software but hardware as well. And the CS side of thing, the computer science side of thing, is one I don't delve into very much. Almost everything I do is IT related, and being able to work through those. Maybe they do add some of those older technologies for historical context. And certainly that would be the only reason that you would add those. But there's that balancing act, isn't it, between what do I put, and I do this all the time with my videos, what do I put in the video to give you context that doesn't necessarily relate to an exam objective, but it's important to know? Because I could spend hours talking to you about Token Ring because it's a networking type, but you don't need to know that for the things that you're doing. So it's one of those where I balance out in my videos. People tell me, you're just telling me what's on the exam objectives. That's right. If you want to know outside the exam objectives, there are plenty of places you can go. But I'm trying to create a training program to give you very tight, narrow focus on the exam. And I try not to deviate or go off of that. Books have a little more room. Reading a book is a different way to learn. Writing a book is a different way to teach. And it's a much more laborious process to create a video than it is to write a paragraph in a book. It takes me a lot to write, to present, to edit, and to give you information. It takes a lot longer time to present information in a video than it is to simply read a paragraph in a book. But it's a different way of learning. So you have to kind of balance out what you're planning to do with the training part of it, because video, we don't have a lot of time, but video takes so much longer to present something. It's more visual, and it takes longer to get the information transferred to you than it would a book. But it's pretty important to have it that way. So that's why my videos have this balancing act associated with them. I could read a book to you on a video, and my video series would be 3 times longer than it is. We don't have that kind of time. You're trying to learn something, get the certification so you can get a job or get a better job. So that's why you'll find my videos will stop at a certain point. You're wondering, is there more? There's a lot more. There's a world more that you could go into. And I just don't put that in there because I can't. I have spent my entire career in information technology working with supercomputers and being a systems engineer and being a manager of systems engineers and being in technical marketing and working with some of the biggest companies in the world and being in some of the biggest data centers in the world. The things I could just drone on about, the stories we have about what we have done in some of these places is remarkable. But the exam has a particular scope, and I'm very sensitive to your time and giving you exactly what you need to know. So that's sort of the longer story about why we do something like that. Yeah, I'm not an Audible book, and it doesn't work that well with training to have there. I was speaking earlier, we talked a little bit about DRM in the presentation. In the first hour, we talked a little bit about DRM. And DRM it's a constant challenge. Somebody in the chat room even mentioned, okay, the biggest DRM in the world is Steam. So that's of course, a gaming front end. You can purchase all of your games. They're on Steam, but you'll notice that your games are in Steam. Can't take your games out of Steam. Can't put your Steam games on a friend's computer unless you log into Steam. But then they're only good while you're logged in. So you're right. That is a very well-developed and successful implementation of DRM that doesn't get in the way of what it's trying to do, but it's still able to protect the content that it's protecting. I have this constant challenge with my content because I have PDFs, I have video, I have audio, and there were times when I was trying to consider, do I implement some type of DRM with these? And I spent a lot of time evaluating video-based DRM from a lot of different companies, and they were just all bad. They were just all horrible. You had to have a particular player. Some of them were very seamless if you had the right player and you had the right connection to the internet, and your videos would work. And at the end of the day, as much as I hate that term, I had to sit back and look at everything and try to figure out, what am I trying to accomplish here? Am I trying to make it more difficult for people to get trained on what they need to know? Or do I want to make it more open and available and not have to deal with all of the overhead associated with having another system in place for DRM? And I think we all recognize, technologists, I think, recognize this better than others, is that you can DRM as much as you'd like. It's not going to matter because there's always a way around the DRM. All of my videos, all of the things that I create, people can download illegally. I recognize this. I am not oblivious to the realities of the world. And in fact, can you imagine spending tens of thousands of dollars on a DRM system, wrapping up all of your videos and creating them with this DRM package around them, rolling out the video series, and then the next day it's available to download for free without any DRM? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So in my particular case, for my particular business goals, for my particular objectives for my customers, DRM didn't make sense. So that's why I even kind of turned it around and said, what if instead of worrying about DRM, we just make all the videos free to watch? That made sense to me. And so that's what we did. And it just sort of went from there. And that's why you just don't see DRM associated with any of the things that I have here. and being able to work through those. It just didn't make any sense. Let's go the phone lines. Let's go the 518 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello, my name is Sean.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, you were talking about DRM. I work for a school district, and we were trying to implement an older version of SimCity that Origin manages the DRM for, because it's made by EA.
Is this
So,
kind of an educational
one of the
thing? Have the kids build the cities out sort of thing? Or is this something in
Right.
the... Okay.
Right. We have this independent learning workshop here in Saratoga, and they have this future city program going on so that they can design, a certain city to work efficiently and whatnot. So
That's cool.
it's I've always known SimCity to be used for educational purposes, so
Makes
it's pretty
sense.
cool. But yeah, so that DRM issue came with the fact that Origin was requiring us to actually log in online every time to be able to use it.
Right.
Which is kind of difficult when, we actually needed it to work offline because we actually block Origin
Right.
with our firewall. Yeah, so we had to install it off the network and then bring it onto the network and try to use it offline.
And did that work? Were you able to at least get that part of it going?
We actually were. Eventually, it just kind of allowed us to log in offline, but originally it wasn't letting us. So I don't really know what the trick was, but eventually it got to work around that. So
What a good idea, though. And of course, your challenge. I get this challenge all the time because, especially K through 12 in the United States, the schools where you go before college, before university, all of those schools you're federally mandated to have a very secure working environment. There's plenty of firewalling, plenty of URL filtering. It's as secure an environment as you can make with today's
absolutely.
technology. And you're, of course, everybody's turning off external proxies. You're worried about malware coming into the site. Security is such an enormous
not
thing.
even SSL 3.0.
Right. So you now have, and load on top of that, these little niche things, something even as simple as watching a YouTube video. But imagine DRM now thrown on top of that, trying to get through all of these security layers and having all of these things work. It's a near impossibility to be able to make that happen. I'm glad to hear in your case that you were able to find a workaround.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did have another question,
Sure.
sort of off topic. It has to do with print management. Now we try to steer clear. Well, right now they're wanting to steer clear of utilizing like a centralized print server because, say, the print server goes down, nobody can print them. However, I was wondering, and I've been trying to look up a way to create like a master configuration. Like if I were to duplicate, printer installations from one system to another without, deploying it through a print server, because
Right.
print server basically is like sharing a printer and it all has to route through the print server.
Yep.
But I'm wondering if there's a way that I'd be able to save an installation configuration and copy it.
Are you looking to save the configuration of the printer, or you save the printouts themselves?
Say I have 2 or 3 printers installed on one computer, named a certain way, to ports using, host name. A way of, instead of having to manually install each individual, the printers, each individual printer on each individual system. Now I do use in MMC, I go in and I add it as each system as a print server. We figured out that was a way to do it easily, but
Yep.
A way to deploy it simply.
Yeah. I really wish there was. In my workings on the Windows administrator side of this, the problem you have is that for some reason, Microsoft really didn't implement a standard way of installing printers into the operating system. It was more of a very broad installation. And so if you run an install from HP, it's a completely different installation than from Brother, which is a completely different installation from Canon. All of those completely different in what they're doing in the operating system, completely different in the programs that are required to get the printers working. The drivers are different. You can get kind of the higher level. MMC is a great way to do it, to give you kind of the higher level install. But I would think that every single one of them is going to have different sets of files and different sets of registry settings. You would really have to do some research for every single one of them and have a blank system, install the software, install the printer, and then go back and see what did it change in all of these places to know how you would have to roll that out in a more automated way. It's almost easier just to manually run the install than trying to figure out how to automate this, unless you're talking about a huge number of printers, I would think.
Right. Well, luckily, they're almost all HP printers, and
Okay.
they're all able to use like the universal print driver. So it's pretty easy. I mean, we've also got our Xerox, work centers, but we're able to use pretty much universal print drivers that are loaded in with the image. So,
That helps.
I was hoping to find a simpler method, but
I can't
guess,
think of one offhand, but I will give that one some thought. Maybe something will come to me as I'm, walking down the street or in the shower thinking, wait a second, I know how we could do that. That's usually when the best ideas show up. So maybe if it does, I'll make a note of that. I'll put it out on the Twitter somewhere.
Sweet. All right.
Well, Sean, thank you for calling. Good luck with that. I'm glad to hear SimCity is working, which is really the best news of the day.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much.
Take care.
And you have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye. Oh, yeah. Don't when you get something that kids can learn from and it's a game and it's fun, I've spent hours in SimCity. So what a great idea of being able to do that and have it there. Yeah, I would think, there could be a GPO for that. It's just the printing part of it and being able to deploy it completely is the challenge, isn't it? I almost have to put in a lab and try it myself to have it there and have that there. In the chat room, folks are asking the live labs, you'll notice have next to the live labs, it talks about 22902, except you'll notice in the 22901, there's some hands-on. It's also included in the 902. It says 902, but it really means all the hands-on you need for the 901 and the 902 and being able to roll that out. Because I ran through it before, all the networking stuff, all the networking command lines, all the troubleshooting of the networking, that's all 901. And you'll find that it's in the live labs that's labeled 902, but it's also in there. I think it's a holdover from when the 802 was really the only hands-on you had. And so they just kept the name, but they didn't change over that it really covers both the 901 and the 902. And having that there, useful to have those. There is, thinking about that printer issue, printers, of course, the bane of Windows environments. And we were talking earlier, group policy, being able to set up a group policy and roll it out. Problem is you're trying to install from scratch, and group policy isn't really where you would install from scratch. It's really where you'd set the policy once it's there. But it may be a combination of MMC and then setting GPOs after it's installed. It's one of those where you really would have to test it because every printer is a little bit different. Do the live labs have other operating systems? I know they have Linux in the other operating systems, but there's no Mac. But there's no hands-on Mac specific that you need to know. Everything that is command line on the A+ exam is something you can do in Linux because the Linux command lines are identical to the Mac OS command lines. So you don't have to worry about that part. And really understanding, it would be nice to have a hands-on on the Mac OS, but you can only virtualize the Mac operating system if you're virtualizing it on Apple hardware. So that's built into the end user license agreement, the EULA. And that's something that you'll find. It's a little bit of a challenge. Is what the same for Security Plus? I'm not sure what you're referring to. In the chat to have that there. Boy, it's been an interesting week for security, though. You're noticing in the United States, we're in the middle of, or at the end of a very long election cycle, and everything security related seems to all be coming back security related to these elections. There's so much now tied up in technology. We're getting as much technology part of the elections as anything else, whether it's interacting with other people with the election or security around what the different different parties are doing with the election. It's remarkable. From a technology perspective, it's remarkable just to see that, whether you're on a whatever side you're on, whatever candidates you're promoting or the candidates you like, or maybe you don't like any candidates this year. Just seeing how all of the technology works in all of this, there is a real opportunity here for knowledgeable people to work in that particular segment, clearly. So if you're ever wondering, are there jobs out there for technical people? Yes, there are jobs out there, because nobody seems to be doing it right at the moment with those pieces. Really challenge. Does the 22901 Pop Quiz Collection and videos have enough information to pass the exam? Well, they have a lot of information. Whether it's enough to pass the exam is really up to you. I generally recommend, if somebody's studying for their A+, their Network Plus, or their Security Plus, that they watch the videos. That's a no-brainer. Get a good book. I don't write books. I'm not a good book writer. The Pop Quiz Collection is a little bit different. It's just a series of questions that I added. I did write a little bit there. I just don't like to write. If I don't like it, I'm not going to do it. So I'm not writing a book. But that's why I have GTS Learning, because they have great books. I use their books. But get the GTS Learning book, or get a book that you like. It doesn't have to be GTS Learning, but get a book. In fact, I recommend you get a couple of books, because the voice of what you're reading in one book is different than another book you're reading. The author's voice it helps you learn. Some people like the GTS Learning, some people don't. Some people like Mike Myers, some people don't. Some people like the exam cram, some people don't. But you can read a little bit of those snippets online to see if it's a book you might want to read. And I recommend you get at least a couple, because books are inexpensive. Books are not a lot of money to invest. And if you get a couple of books and it helps you really understand those topics, you're in good shape. The Pop Quiz Collection, I think, is good, because I think once you go through books and you go through videos, testing yourself on the questions is important. And that's why I wrote the Pop Quiz Collection, so that people would have another option available that was well focused on the exam objectives that they could trust to be able to test themselves on the material that's in the exam objectives. So that's why those are there. And I think those three things are a good mix. Of course, ultimately, hands-on is you also need to get. So if you have your own computer, you want to run the live labs, whatever it happens to be, that would be a good thing to do as well, because I think that muscle memory, you running a ping and seeing what happens, it really sticks it into the synapses a lot better than you watching someone else run a ping. There's just something about it where if you're doing it yourself, you can really understand the process, and doing it wrong helps you understand the process even better, and going through those. Yeah, Amazon ratings are good. I agree. Getting the right book for you can be a bit of a challenge. So read what other people are saying. You can kind of get a feel for what those Amazon rankings might be. Let's go to 512 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hey, I'm Will from Texas.
Hey, Will.
And I got a...
Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yes, I'm a student, I'm a high school student, and I'm actually interested in cybersecurity. And I want to know what students in high school can do today to prepare themselves for a field or a career in cybersecurity.
Good for you. When I was in high school, the idea of a personal computer was unique. We were just getting computers that you could put in your homes. And the idea of even having security associated with that, there wasn't a cybersecurity market. There was no such thing as cybersecurity. We didn't even have computer viruses yet. So obviously today, a much different world. Now, I now do this full time, but prior to doing this, I worked 7 years for a next generation firewall company. And so cybersecurity was everything I did during that time frame. And I got to travel all over the United States talking to people about the things they were doing for security in their environments. I talked to the largest companies in the world. I talked to the smallest organizations in the world and talked to them about how they were doing security. And the one thing that is a foundation across everybody, practically everybody I met in these security departments, whether they were at these enormous organizations or they were somebody that were just trying to keep their small business going, is that they needed a very good foundation in networking. And this is something that I tell anybody who wants to get into security. get the biggest and best foundation in networking as you can. And for a couple of reasons. So first is everything you do in IT is connected with the network. So if you know a lot about the network, you can really do a lot of different things in IT. You can work on internet connectivity. You can be in a data center. You can work on databases. You can work on server management. You can maintain anything that happens to be in the environment if you're very familiar with the networking side of things. But perhaps even more so with security. Security requires that you layer on top of your network knowledge an understanding of how to protect everything on the network. So having an understanding of how firewalls operate is really a purely networking thing. You have to understand layer 3 routing. You have to understand BGP and route redistribution. You have to know how to configure static or dynamic routing in your environment. You have to know how to make it work with everything else that's in your environment. You also have to know how an IPS is going to protect things on the network. You're often the one who's going to have to create a secure tunnel with an IPsec VPN between sites. That's almost a pure networking play with a little bit of security sprinkled on top of it. There is a requirement that you interact with other companies and be able to create the additional security on top of that with certificates and being able to secure the devices coming in. All of these are just networking after another with security layered on top. So anybody who's going into IT security, one of the primary thing, no matter where you are in your career, whether you're in a high school, whether you're in college, whether you're in you got a job and you're working out in a field, is get that networking knowledge. And where most people will start, in fact, most of the security people I met started on their network team. So they were managing switches, they were managing routers, they were connecting all of their campuses together, because that really gave them the knowledge they needed to be able to protect it, because they knew how it was built to begin with. I see a lot of people that are trying to go into security and they're starting this by saying, I'm going to learn everything I can about security because I'm going to go into a security role. And it generally, sometimes it works that way, but it generally wraps through the networking piece first. If you can get that networking, you're going to be much better positioned to move into security right after that. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of perspective.
It has. Thank you so much, Professor Messer, for your insight.
Absolutely. Good luck with this. I think you're absolutely on the right track. Technology and IT in general, you're just starting out into this. Whenever I started, there was no internet, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook. There certainly was not video that I could put somewhere and everybody in the world would be able to see it. You have no idea where this is going to lead you, and that's okay. As long as you understand these basic fundamental technologies, you can just follow the road wherever it happens to take you. And in 20 years, you'll be able to look back and go, wow, I had no idea I'd be here, but look at where all of this technology has gone and how we were able to get to that point. It's a great career path. And I think more people should really jump on board and consider doing exactly what you're trying to do as well. So good luck.
Now, Professor Messer, can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
This summer I attended a cybersecurity program at UT Dallas, and we learned a program called Packet Tracer, Cisco Packet Tracer.
Sure.
Is that a fundamental program to learn in developing knowledge with network security?
It's a great one to learn. Packet Tracer, for those who are not familiar with it, it's a Cisco software. It runs in Windows and it runs in Linux. It is effectively a simulation environment where you can build out a network design on your screen with routers and switches, of course with Cisco routers and Cisco switches, and then you can connect to them and install them as if it was a real device. It's the same user interface. You're running Cisco software inside of it. You're building it up from scratch as if you had plugged into the device yourself at a console, and you're configuring all of the switch settings and the VLANs and the dynamic routing. And you can actually see everything moving in between and how it interoperates with all the other routers and switches on your network. It is a great learning device. It is one that everybody who's taking their CCENT or their CCNA should primarily be using Packet Tracer because for first, it's free from Cisco. So that's a great advantage. Cisco recently changed their licensing of Packet Tracer so that anybody would be able to use it. Up until a few months ago, you had to be someone who was taking Cisco classes at their Cisco Academy or one of their Cisco Academy sites. Now they just open it up so that anybody can use it, which is, I think, fantastic. They should have really done this a long time ago. But it's a fantastic because it doesn't require any additional software. Some other folks in the chat room are saying, well, you could run GNS3, which is an open source piece of software that does a similar thing. But unfortunately, GNS3 doesn't include the code to run the switches and the routers, which is really the core piece of this. You would already need a Cisco switch or a Cisco router so that you could have the code so that you could run it in GNS3. Well, if I already have a switch and I already have a router, I wouldn't need GNS3 to be able to do that. There are some advantages and disadvantages between both, but I think Packet Tracer is the one that certainly Cisco supports the most. And it's a great tool to be able to virtually bring up a couple of switches, to connect a router, to configure a routing protocol, and watch all of the things that happens in between. It's a fantastic tool. And I think more people should take advantage of it.
Thank you so much for answering that question.
Absolutely. You spend a lot of time in there. You'll be ready in no time for connecting to the real network. Appreciate you calling.
Thank you.
I love the Packet Tracer. I was so glad to see that they changed the licensing. It was something that people were having to go and download illegally or download and use illegally because they didn't take a Cisco course. It just didn't make sense. If you're Cisco, why would you not want people to learn how to use your product? Just didn't make sense at all. And so I was very glad to see they changed the licensing on it. And it was for me, I didn't even consider using it because I had never taken a formal Cisco Academy course. So I just didn't use that software. Well, now I can download it and use it as much as I'd like. And the more you know about how to use it, the more familiar you'll be with Cisco switches, with Cisco routers, with doing things at the command line. And that's the real key when you get into network administration, being able to do those types of things. Very, very useful. And I realize GNS3 does have some advantages as well because it will do other manufacturers' products. You can integrate a packet capture, a protocol analyzer into the middle of it. There's a lot of interesting things that technology does as well. And it absolutely has its place. But for people that are just getting started, GNS3 way over the top, way too complex and difficult to get going. And ultimately, you don't have what you need to run anything in GNS3. So I like the fact that you can download Packet Tracer, everything's in one place. You can do everything and you're good to go. Just makes sense. And there's a lot of people that have already built labs and you just download the Packet Tracer lab and you can run it on your Packet Tracer. It's a good way to learn how to connect a bunch of networks together. In the chat room, the question is it a good way to prototype network layouts? Prototype is a very broad word. It means a lot of different things to different people. There are people that really want to prototype and do different things on their network, like run real traffic through it, see what happens with the real traffic. That's not what it's necessarily designed to do. It's a learning tool. It's used in the Cisco training classes to help you understand how to build out multi-router and multi-switch networks, to use some of these advanced technologies and being able to connect them, to do link aggregation, to use dynamic routing, to be able to connect them all together, to break network settings, hand it to somebody and say, can you fix the network? Where's it going wrong? That's what it's best used for. And it does a great job of that as well. Whenever I work through it, I like doing that. I like building out a network and then breaking something and having you go in and figure out where it's broken. That's a great use of Packet Tracer. There is somebody in the chat room was saying, what about the new project? Yeah, what about that? I do have new things going on right now, but I'm not going to talk about it. So there you go. It doesn't exist yet. I generally only talk about projects when there's something real. It's no good telling you something that doesn't exist yet. So right now it exists. Back here, there's on my screens, there's things that are back behind all of this that I've been working on. I'm trying to get it going. There's a lot to do, but it's nowhere near able to tell you what's going on quite yet. It's just one of those things. Plus, in the middle of all this, I'm sure at the end of this year, beginning of next, Security Plus is coming up for an update, so I'll need to update those. So I hate to tell people I'm working on a project and then I have to table it while I get the Security Plus updated or work in conjunction with the Security Plus. Nobody wants that. So as soon as I have something that's worthwhile that I can show you, I will do that. But I'm absolutely working on something behind the scenes. It's not a CompTIA project. It's not a CompTIA training project. It is a training project, but it's for something different than CompTIA, which I think we need. We need more stuff. We need more things. So I'm going to give you more things on the website. Plus, there's other things happening on the website. We've got a big refresh going on with the website right now. I want to give you some nicer looking pages and better graphics. Hopefully get it running a little faster. There's all kinds of things that are piled on and being able to work through those. So got a lot of people doing a lot of different things right now, just trying to keep it all up and running. When I don't have people attack, I have Twitter that keeps hitting my website to do its indexing, and it over indexes my site. It just pummels my site. It's like a denial of service attack from Twitter, literally on my site. It takes my database out. It's a mess. I've had to block Twitter from my site. There's some things you can put on a web server that tell these bots how much they can hit your site. Twitter just ignores it. So there's little things that I'm trying to make sure the site just keeps running and have it there. It's always a challenge. Any thoughts on Macintosh certification from the web, from the chat? I think there's a very large contingent of Mac OS users. And I guess really iOS users as well, with all of the tablets and iPhones as well. And there are certifications for all of those from Apple. I'm not doing anything on the Macintosh side of things. I would love to do Apple certification videos. I think it would be a lot of fun. I use Mac OS as my primary workstation. Everything you saw today is running on Sierra or it's running on iOS. I'm controlling a lot of things with my tablet on the screens that you're seeing. When you see things fly by, it's because I'm just tapping my tablet and watching those slides go by. Because I can just roll up and have everything automated from one screen. It's just an easy way to do it. There's just such a limited number of people that need that content, though, that I don't have any plans to create any Apple-specific content. That's always the challenge for me because I'm one person. I'm not a corporation of people, and I have a self-imposed requirement as to the type of content and the quality of content I want to offer. And we've talked about this before in other study groups, is that I could grab a bunch of people. I could create a series of studios. We could get warehouse space, create a bunch of studios, and just start churning out bunches and bunches of certification courses. But that's not my goal. My goal is to create some very specific, well-structured training that has the highest possible quality that it can have. And I think if we were to roll this out where I was managing other people creating the content rather than me creating the content, I don't know that I do know. It just would not have the same level of quality. It can't, to be able to do something like that. So that's not what I'm going after. I'm not trying to create the most amount of training possible. I'm trying to create a very specific niche of training that has a higher quality. And I think that's more valuable than quantity. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. So far, it's working out. So far, the business model is working. I'm here every month. The lights are on. People are being fed. Children have clothing. The dogs are being fed. The horse is happy, that kind of thing. So far, we're okay. But I'm always thinking about what the next steps are going to be. Are there other things we could be doing? But I want to be able so that when we roll out those things, when we perform or do those additional services, products, or tasks, that all of them will have the same level of quality. Ultimately, it comes down to that. I'm just not willing to compromise on that. Everybody else, for some reason, is. I'm not going to. There's a concept in training, especially certification training, that you just need it to be good enough. And I don't subscribe to that. My philosophy is completely different with how I want to present this content. So we'll see. I don't think either one of them is wrong. I think there is a place for just good enough for those particular products. My model's different. Is it better or worse? I don't know. I don't know if it's better or worse. Maybe I'm doing exactly the wrong thing. I don't think so. I think I'm doing exactly the right thing. So far, it's been just fine. So far, we're doing great. It's a weird world I live in. The concept of training on the internet is dramatically different than it was from 5 years ago. Some of you know, just last month we hit our 10-year anniversary. Messer Studios was 10 years old. So it was one where a lot has changed in 10 years. Some things have not. So while the industry around me has changed and consolidated quite a bit, a lot of training companies that were out there 10 years ago no longer around. They were acquired by someone else. They're now Pluralsight. They're now CBT Nuggets. But things like Train Signal, they're not around anymore. A lot of the other sites that were around, they just don't exist anymore. So the model has changed, and what people expect has changed. There are new companies around doing training, some doing it well, some not doing it well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in the next 10 years to see what happens with training on the internet. I'm just trying to hold on. It's going faster than anyone can really expect to keep up. So you just have to keep tweaking and changing and doing the things we're doing, and hopefully it works out just fine. Let's go back to the phone lines. We'll go to the 786 area code. Are you there, caller? Which name?
Hi, how's it going? It's Wakar calling you from Los Angeles.
Oh, welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
Okay, so I had actually two questions. The first one was that the A+ certification. It's I think they transitioned into 901 or something, and
right.
So I went to their website. Is the 800 series still? Can we still take that exam? And my second question was that I am planning on taking the path of penetration testing and ethical hacking. So what route would you suggest in order to become to have a successful career in that field? Thank you.
Sure. In fact, if you go to the CompTIA website, it's almost a little confusing because both the 800 series exams and the 900 series exams are listed on the CompTIA website, right, at least for the next month or two. And in December of last year, CompTIA released the 900 series exams, but they kept the 800 series exams at the same time because there were people that were studying for the old version, and they just didn't want to release a new version and cause everyone to now stop what they're doing and have to restudy for the new topics. So they always have this overlap period. And what they did is on December 15th, they introduced the 900 series. And for English-speaking countries, they retired the 800 series exams on June the 30th. So we've gone a number of months here in the United States. The 800 series exams are gone for us. Other parts of the world that English is not the primary language of that country, they will still continue to offer the 800 series exam until December the 31st. So as at the end of this calendar year, the 800 series exams disappear for everybody. For us here in the U.S., they effectively disappeared over the summer. They no longer exist as far as we know. Everything now is transitioned to the 900 series exams. So if you are today planning to take your 900 series exams and you can understand the language that I am speaking right now, you should absolutely have all of your books and all of your materials say that they are for the 220-901 or the 220-902 exam, depending on which one you're studying for. So that's perhaps the most important thing, that you have the right training materials. And at least for the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be the 900 series exams. I think the scope you have, in fact, very similar to the call we had earlier from, I think it was Sean, who was saying that we wanted to have some type of training for security. And I think as we've seen, and as I've seen, the security market is huge right now. I was at a meeting a couple of years ago with CIOs, the central information officers for some very large companies. In fact, some of them were CISOs, or the Central Information Security Officer for some very large companies. And what I found interesting is the person who was running this conference I was at as people, for all of you that are hiring right now, how many companies, how many of you in this room have open requisitions for full-time employees for security? Everybody's hand went up. And we got to talking with some of these people during lunch, and they just don't have enough security people to be able to fill the requisitions. And it's very competitive. You might get somebody who's perfect for a job. Well, that person's also interviewing at 3 other companies, and they're shopping around to get the best salary that they can get, the best circumstances that they can get. So it's a great market to get into right now. Everybody needs very well-trained security people. And as we could see, it's only getting worse. So we only need more security people. And I think the comments I said earlier apply as well. If you're planning to get into security, get as much information and much knowledge as you can about networking as possible, because that's going to help you get into that. Now, of course, there is more that you need to know beyond networking to get into the security role, but you're not going to be able to get into security unless you understand all of those networking nuances. So if you're even if you're planning to get some of these CISSP or other related certifications, make sure you understand the networking side of things before going into that. It's going to make all the difference when it comes to integrating a firewall at layer 3 or even a firewall at layer 1, or doing an IPsec tunnel or creating SSL VPN connections. All of those things require some knowledge, in fact, an extensive knowledge of networking that you're not going to know if you just jump into security. So that's probably the one biggest tip that I can really give anybody who's trying to get into security. Get your networking information solid first, then jump onto the security side. And he hung up. He has heard enough of me. He's had it with the, Larry, I'm going to hang up and listen to the answer. And that's the answer. I think that when you get into security, I think a lot of places, I'm seeing this also in the chat room, somebody mentioned this during the week, is that they were going to a security boot camp where they're just going to jump right into security. And there were some people that I worked with in some of these companies where they started in the security role. They were in help desk and they brought them over to do a particular thing in the security. But it doesn't work very well if you're trying to implement a firewall and it's a redundant firewall configuration. Do you implement an active-active or an active standby? And if it's going to be active-active, is it going to be one that integrates with the active-active configuration in your switches? Or is it going to be one that has its own active-active configuration? Is it going to have IP addresses that float between both of those devices? Will it be the same IP address on both of those firewalls? And how does that look to the routers that are downstream? Just that one thing is a real tough thing to crunch through when you're trying to implement these security devices onto a network. That is not an easy answer. That is one where you sit in a room for a morning or an afternoon and you really go through the configuration with a fine-tooth comb to figure out, how do we take a redundant firewall configuration and integrate it with your existing routers and switches, because everybody's doing something different with their routers and switches. So it is a real challenge to get that, because if you know the networking piece of it, that becomes easier. The whole how do I implement it is almost automatic. Let's see how your switches are configured. Let's see how your routers are configured. Are you running VSS? Are you not? Is it a different type of configuration you have? Are you routing it through? Should I be doing routing on my side? Should it be a dynamic route? Should we be doing static? Should I be doing layer 2 instead of layer 3? You know, all of these things are design decisions that you'd never be able to make for your firewalls unless you had a very strong background in networking. And that's why I always say networking makes all the difference in IT security and making that happen. In the chat room, somebody's asking about, isn't there an IT fundamentals cert that CompTIA has? There is, and I think it's called IT fundamentals now. It used to be called something different. They had a different name for it that didn't work out. IT fundamentals, I think, works a little better. And it's a very high-level cert. Most people consider the A+ exam to be the starting point. Imagine having an even simpler starting point, if you will. And that's IT fundamentals. Really giving people the knowledge to understand, do they really even want to get into IT? I think is what the IT fundamentals cert really fits the best at. and having that there. It's one where I don't see a lot of, some people ask for it. I get about a question a month about the IT fundamentals exam. There are some organizations that are training or colleges that require people take that as a prerequisite to what they're doing, or it's the first stop of learning before they get into the A+ material. So I have some people ask about it. There's just not a lot of people that ask about it. It's not a huge group. So it seems A+ is really more of the starting point that people seem to go with. I think that's probably if you really look at those. Some people have in the chat have also asked me about other organizations that have some of these programs, like Western Governors University. There's a number of organizations like local community colleges or four-year colleges even that are doing IT programs these days. I just don't have enough knowledge of those programs to be able to comment on how well they are or not. Obviously, in the United States, there was a company, ITT, that did technical training around the country. They were a very large organization with a lot of students, and they lost their accreditation, and ultimately all of the loans that they were able to offer from the government went away because they lost their accreditation, and they effectively closed in a week because of that. The government, it wasn't even a week, it was a day. The government said, we can't provide loans to these students anymore because we don't trust that what they're learning is any good. And ITT said, well, there goes all of our students. We don't have anybody left. We're going to have to close the doors. And that was recently. This was the last, it's in the fall, so only a few months ago when that happened. So now all of those people are thinking about, where do I go to get trained? Traditionally, I have always said, find a community college or a state-run organization to handle that type of training. It's not that a private organization couldn't provide that. They certainly could, but you get into these situations like with ITT, where it's a private organization that did not do very well in the management of that organization. And ultimately, all of those people that had invested their time, invested their money with this organization, now we're left with nothing. There are some very good state-run organizations that are now starting to do more with practical IT knowledge, thankfully. I've talked about this for years on these study groups, that we're teaching people the wrong things. I got a degree in business management, but none of my classes actually taught me how to manage anyone. So it's the same thing with IT. People are getting technology degrees where you've never had to touch a switch or a router or do anything on an operating system. That doesn't make sense to me. And a lot of these newer programs are things like Western Governors University is a group of state-run community colleges and universities working together. So you know that there's a strong backing there. And I think people generally have very good things to say. If you go to Reddit, to the WGU subreddit, I think that's a good place to start. You can ask people questions about what they think about what they've learned there. Everybody does it a different way. So something to consider. I don't have any personal knowledge of their program, so unfortunately I'm just not able to provide you any more detail other than at least it's a state-run organization, so I feel a little bit better about it. Not to say that a private organization couldn't provide you with good training. It's just history. It's just looking at what's out there and knowing what's good or what's bad. A little bit more of a challenge to have that there. Well, with that, we have come to the end of another hour in the after show. My voice is held out the entire time. Can you believe it? I want to thank everybody for joining us on the study group today for the first hour. I always love the Q&A part. We'll do it again next week at the same time. Although by next time, our clocks will have changed in the United States. So if you are looking at the clocks, make sure you check in with, we'll no longer be on daylight saving time next week. I think we're switching over on Sunday. So make sure you check the times for next week if you plan to attend the Network Plus study group. You can always go to the professormesser.com/calendar and you'll be able to convert it. Everything should be there for those pieces. Also want to thank everybody for hanging out for the second part of the study group. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for hanging out and making sure that somebody's here so I'm not talking to the air. The questions always work a little bit better when there's someone here to answer them. And I want to thank you all for that and having that there. It never gets old. I never not appreciate the fact that you're there. And thanks for your ongoing support through the pop quiz collection and the course notes and watching the videos in general. Thanks for your likes and your comments. And you're always able to send and contact me either in the chat room or from the website. I love to get your comments and your messages. And with that, I think we've come to the end of another study group. For those of you that'll be here next week, we'll see you then. Otherwise, we'll see you next month on the A+ study group. We'll see what happens in the December edition of that. We'll close out the year. Thanks for joining us. See you next time on the study group. Thanks, everyone.